Okay, firstly, I would not say to what degree does intergenerational trauma contribute to the mental health issues in our community. Instead, I would say intergenerational trauma is the root cause that contributes to the mental health issues in our community. Why? Within the Black African diaspora, poverty is the foundation of that trauma which contributes to the mental health issues in our community. Imagine poverty being the root cause, with other underlying additional factors that contribute to the mental health issues within our community. These are gender, so lack of opportunities for females. Violence is another one. It's prevalent in our culture and accepted as normal. Flogging and whipping is common in the Black African diaspora, and no one questions its validity. Our language of love is practiced in the form of beatings. It starts from childhood and can pass well into our adult years. People would say white people beat their children too. And I would say, but you can call social services and the police can get involved. And it is a crime to practice corporal punishment like beating on your children in this country. This means that children learn that it is okay to beat or be a recipient of beatings. All of this eventually leads to trauma. Another one is lack of education. Education is still the domain of the privileged. And with more education, less conflict and better understanding of the society and culture we live in. Low income, we experience a lot more hardship within the family unit, which can result in less access to cultural institutions like museums, travel, and sport. Racism, due to the nature of our skin color, we are different to our white peers, and therefore social mobility in the host country we live in will be shaped to some extent by circumstances, not necessarily our qualifications, and our qualifications will also be shaped and determined by our circumstance. Absentee fathers, lone parents, single mothers, gun culture, gang culture, and silence within the Black community regarding mental health issues leading to the non-verbal communication and stigma amongst those affected. Ostracism, if one is seen to be opening up about nuances within the community and culture, and in doing so exposing these nuances to authorities who may be in some cases white. This is felt as an act of betrayal and can provoke fear in community leaders, provoking hostility amongst community members, leading to more fear, which leads to more silence and isolation amongst the community, which is a form of sickness, and in my opinion can impact on one's mental health for those who may have tried to expose certain facts. An example, female genital mutilation. There has been no prosecution here in the UK. Okay, and matriarchy. By definition, a form of social organization which descent and relationships are reckoned through the female line. If your mother experienced domestic violence, sexual abuse, physical abuse, female genital mutilation, in most cases, in my opinion, there is a likelihood that it will pass from generation to generation, from mother to daughter, affecting not just females, but the way in which males are socialized into relationships, as well as intimate relationships, and the value they place on the women in their lives, which affect and have an impact on the families they go on to create. Right, so what normally happens is that women who are victims of sexual abuse, domestic violence, or FGM are, in my opinion, definitely going to have some form of mental health problems. The mothers in most scenarios confide in their daughters and tell them things regarding their situations which are in most cases not age appropriate, because they have no one to tell or confide in, and in most scenarios do not want to suffer on their own or in silence. Their default position is first to tell their daughters. These daughters become confident and in turn see their mother's situation as normal, as well as their own. When they go to school, they keep quiet about what is going on at home and therefore do not receive the right support. As a result, they recreate what they experience within the home in their own families. In terms of FGM, the mothers are usually humiliated, as well as ensuring that their daughters do not escape by marrying on the pretext of love and desire, which is not how and why they married their own husbands. The males believe that this way of life is normal and replicate this dynamic by marrying into this kind of dysfunction and replicate the same dynamic which passes through future generations. And therefore, what can we do about it? Okay, now we need more awareness in our community. We need to educate ourselves on the hidden social nuances that occur in the community and the wider diaspora, e.g. arranged marriages, FGM, bigamy, illiteracy, and domestic violence, and the extent poverty can play in the family unit, which can either make or break a child, as their parents are not in a position to meet that child's needs from an early age. Example, parents being able to afford swimming lessons so that their children can perhaps learn to swim and develop better communication skills or be in a position to play and have fun. Training more counselors from the Black community so that people no longer feel hostile to the idea of taking up the services of a counselor. Curriculums in schools becoming more culturally sensitive to the different ethnic makeup of their institutions, which can enhance more inclusion, creating more harmony, bringing teachers, parents, and students together. So more inclusion, less isolation. Campaigning for classes on mental health to provide a framework for children explaining and communicating what is healthy and unacceptable behavior. This means that children will learn from an early age that violence is not an acceptable form of communication. Instead making it acceptable for children, in particular Black children or children of color, to be told that healthy, respectable discussion is assertive and good for their self-esteem. Promoting more awareness by being the change you want to see. Do this by actively engaging in respectable talking, discussing, revealing, sharing, and exposing. If you see something wrong in the way the media portrays mental health, especially in relation to the Black African, Afro-Caribbean diaspora, blow the whistle and challenge so that we can all unite as a community and change the existing state of affairs for the good of future generations. I enjoyed reading Dr. Leary's book. It was very insightful. However, there were gaps in my opinion. I am from Nigeria in West Africa, and though a lot of people from West Africa were shipped and then enslaved in the Americas as well as the Caribbean, there is a need to explore what the legacy is for the Africans who were not shipped to the New World and then enslaved by their white masters. I accept that colonial rule was the way in which Africa had to evolve. However, the legacy of that colonial rule has presented its own set of circumstances for the Africans today, which are very different to what you see and find in America. I believe that as Dr. Leary wrote a book about post-traumatic slave syndrome, referring to the legacy of enslavement for African Americans in relation to their culture and history, there must also be a post-traumatic colonial slave syndrome, which is pertinent to the Africans who were not shipped and enslaved in the New World, i.e. America, but instead had to evolve in a different way to their African American brothers and sisters from generation to generation, until one by one each African country got its own independence from the colonial masters. In relation to Dr. Leary's book, what I've learned is that there are a multitude of post-traumatic colonial slave syndromes that have never been studied in this context. So this is really the end, but what I will say is, if you find what I've said tonight interesting, my story, I wrote my story. My book is called My Side of the Story, My Perspective and My Truth. And my father was a former Nigerian ambassador to Geneva, Switzerland, who was sentenced to 8 years for raping his Filipino maid in Switzerland. And that book is really about my story and what led up to me writing that book. And I bring in the fact that he was the ambassador and the way my siblings, my mother in particular, evolved through all of this. So thank you very much.